Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all for today's webinar series organized by Department of Shalya Tantra, SVM Ayurvedic Medical College, Ilkal. And today's topic is on inguinal hernia. And I heartily welcome our today's guest speaker, Dr. Hanumant Bagi. Good morning, sir. Dr. Sangeeta?
Yes, ma'am.
Over to you for guest introduction.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning to one and all. Myself, Dr. Sangeeta Gajendra, second year PG scholar, Department of Shalya Tantra. It's my pleasure to introduce today's eminent speaker, Dr. Hanumant Bagi, sir. Sir, presently working as Associate Professor in Department of Shalya Tantra at SDM Trust, Terdar. Sir completed his UG from Ashwini Ayurvedic Medical College, Tumkur, and PG from KLE University, Belgaum. And Sir has expert in management of wounds, anorectal diseases, parasurgical procedures, and other general surgeries. Sir has presented so many research articles in national and international seminars. Sir has awarded with Best Dissertation Award by the KLE University for outstanding work on a randomized controlled trial to evaluate the effect on pain by Agni Karma with Buddha and Panchaloha Shalaka in Janu Sandigata Vata. Today, sir is going to present topic on inguinal hernia. Thank you, sir. It's over to you, sir. Please continue with the session, sir.
Hanumant sir, am I audible? Sir, ನನ್ನ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಹಲೋ ಸರ್. ಹಲೋ.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Sir, good morning.
Good morning. Sir, audible?
Sir, audible, sir. Audible.
Hello.
And your computer also visible, sir.
Audible?
Yes, sir, sure.
Visible? Okay, sir. Okay,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So, video on it. Video.
Continue, sir.
Yes, sir. So, I'm very much thankful for the nice introduction by Dr. Sangeeta madam. So, first of all, I would like to bow my head to the lotus feet of Lord Dhanvantri, who is the god of Ayurveda, and ಬಾಲು ಬಾಲು PPT run PPT ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. Is it audible, sir? Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Hello.
Sir. ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್.
So,
Sir, audible, sir, audible.
okay. Right, sir. So I would like to continue my session. So I would like to thank the brief introduction regarding me by Dr. Sangeeta Madam. And first of all, I would like to bow my head to the lotus feet of Lord Dhanvantari, who is the god of Ayurveda. And this is our college campus. You might have seen the STM Trust Ayurvedic Medical College, Derda. So today's topic to be discussed is inguinal hernia. So myself, no more information. Why? Because already it has been explained by the Dr. Sangeeta Madam nicely. These are all the contents of my today's topic to be discussed. That to introduce regarding the inguinal hernia and definition, anatomy, etiology, pathology of the inguinal hernia, indirect or oblique inguinal hernia, direct inguinal hernia, signs and symptoms, treatment of the inguinal hernia, and conclusion. So, to introduce the inguinal hernia, there are around 5% of the population developed abdominal wall hernia. Okay. So, among these 5% of the
So
yes,
the
sir.
slide is not visible. I mean, next slide is not visible, sir.
Now, sir, is it visible
No,
now?
sir. I mean, that Dhanvantari itself visible. The next slides are not coming. You need to change the slide. Yes,
Okay.
it's visible now. Introduction is open. Thank you.
Is it visible now?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Right, sir. Introduction.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So to introduce regarding the inguinal hernia. So 5% of population develop the abdominal wall hernia. Okay. So among these, the common external hernias are the inguinal hernia will be the commonest. Around 75% of the individuals suffer from the inguinal hernia. Okay. And the femoral hernia will be suffered by around 17% of the individuals, and umbilical hernia around 8.5%, and incisional hernia not included because of it is occurring based on the disease condition and based on the injuries happening during the surgery, nerve injuries. So that will cause the incisional hernias. So here, why the inguinal hernias are very common? It's nothing but it's an huge anatomical weakness which is present in the anterior abdominal wall. Okay, so that is why in this it is very common to occur in the individuals. Around 73% of the individuals are suffering from inguinal hernia. Okay. So here there are the external hernias which have been shown in the image. Epigastric hernias. ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರಿ
ಅದು ಅವ್ರ ಕಡೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಯ್ತು, ಅವ್ರ ನೆಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್. ನಮ್ಮ ಕಡೆ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ. ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಡೇಟಾ ಸರ್. ಎರಡು ಸಲ ಕಾಲ್ ಮಾಡೀನಿ ಮೈಸೂರದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶಂಕರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕಾಲ್ ಮಾಡೀನಿ ಇನ್ನೇ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಏನು ರಿಪ್ಲೈ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೂ ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ಪಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳೀನಿ ಇನ್ನೂರು ಹಾಂ ಅವ್ರ ಕಡೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಐತೆ ನಮ್ದೇನು ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಐತೆ ಅವ್ರು ರೀಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಇನ್ನೊಮ್ಮೆ
Hello.
Budni sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir, audible. Please continue.
Please continue.
Sir, there was a little bit of network issue. So there was a little bit of network issue, sir. So sorry for that. Audible now, sir?
Yes,
Sir, audible. Audible and visible, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So these are the external inguinal hernias where we have left. Okay, so these are the external inguinal hernias. So sorry, not only the external abdominal hernias. The epigastric hernia, when it is occurring in the epigastric region, it is called as epigastric hernia. And paraumbilical hernias, umbilical hernia, lumbar hernia, spiglion, femoral hernia, and inguinal hernia. So among these, we are discussing regarding inguinal hernia in this today's topic. So the definition, in general, definition of hernia goes like this. A hernia is an abnormal protrusion of a part or whole of viscus through an abnormal opening in the wall of cavity which contains it. Okay. So in general, any part or whole of viscus which is protruding through the abnormal opening in the wall of the cavity which contains it is called as hernia. Okay. It is an in general. Okay. So inguinal hernia concern here what happens, an inguinal hernia is a protrusion of the part of abdominal part of the abdomen through the inguinal region of the abdominal wall. Okay, so here the contents are protruding through the inguinal canal, okay, or the inguinal region. Okay, any contents like either it may be intestine or the omentum or else ovary or the fallopian tube or else the bladder. So okay, so this is regarding the definition. So I repeat once again, an inguinal hernia is the protrusion of the part of the abdomen through the inguinal region of the abdominal wall. Okay. So before going to the disease proper, we'll discuss regarding the anatomy of the inguinal canal. Okay. So here the development of inguinal canal, how the development of inguinal canal takes place. Here in the image, in the 7th week, the primordial testis usually develops from this genital ridge, okay, in the lumbar region. So where you can see that testis in the lumbar region, okay, during the embryonic life in the 7th week. So from there, the lower polyp, from there it is attached with the gubernaculum. Okay, it's an fibromuscular bundle. So which is the gubernaculum, which is attached from the lower pole of the testis, and from there it will attach towards the scrotal skin. Okay, during the embryonic life in the 7th week. So as the days passes through, okay, so this gubernaculum is going to be reduced in its length. Okay, so when it's reducing its length, then what happens there? The testis also pulls down towards the pelvic cavity, and in the 7th month, the testis comes and lodges in the deep inguinal ring. Okay, all right. Okay. So next, on the 9th month, in the 9th month onwards, during the 9th month, what happens there? So this gubernaculum, again, its size reduces. So along with that, there is a processus vaginalis, or it's a peritoneum. It's a part of peritoneum which pulls the testis down towards the scrotum. So along with that, processus vaginalis also comes down till the scrotum, and this gubernaculum becomes rudimentary part is called as scrotal ligament, okay, in the scrotum itself. So here it is very important that this processus vaginalis, usually it becomes rudimentary immediately after birth. So this rudimentary in the sense it will become a cord-like structure. So first it closes at the level of deep inguinal ring, and second closure usually takes place above the epididymis or above the upper pole of the testis, and remaining processus vaginalis patency will be closed. Okay, so like that usually it gets closed. If there is any patency in this processus vaginalis, then that will lead to then indirect inguinal hernia. Okay, so this is very, very important to understand. So during the descent of this testis, it will take its blood supply, that is testicular artery, pampiniform plexus, and this vas deferens, so all together to form a spermatic cord. Okay, so these structures will be remaining in the inguinal canal. Okay, this is about the development of inguinal canal in the males. Okay, so now the development of inguinal canal in the females is similar to that of male only, but only the difference is what here usually the ovaries, primordial ovaries, are going to develop in the lumbar region, and again it is connected with the gubernaculum. So this is a fibromuscular bundle which is developed during the embryonic life in the 2nd month, and this is connected up to the labia majora. This is very important, and this is connected up to the labia majora. So during this time, it will this gubernaculum usually present inside this deep inguinal ring and the superficial inguinal ring, finally into the labia majora. Okay. So during the 15 weeks, okay, during that time what happens? The gubernaculum size again going to be reduced, and this gubernaculum is attached in 2 parts. Okay, this gubernaculum is attached from the lower pole of the ovary to the uterus, that is called as ovarian ligament, and from uterus to the labia majora, that is called as that will be present inside the inguinal canal. Okay, along with that, during the time of along with that, what happens? This round ligament is going to be protruded through this inguinal canal. Okay, here usually it is called as canal of Nuck. Okay, so canal of Nuck is nothing but what? So it is derived from Anton Neck during the 1961. So this canal, usually it is nothing but a process vagina itself. Okay, so usually the contents, any contents which are protruding through this canal, then it is called as indirect inguinal hernia in females. Okay. So now coming to the inguinal canal, so this is a triangular slit, or some text they have mentioned it is like it is a cylindrical in shape. Okay, so and usually it is above the inner half of the inguinal ligament. So above the inner half of the ligament. So how to identify it? So first you should understand the anterior superior iliac spine and the pubic tubercle. So from there you have to draw the line from anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle, and just midpoint of this line, you just make out the midpoint of on this line, and just above the half inch above you will find the inguinal canal. Okay, so from here, from deep inguinal ring to the superficial inguinal ring, it is considered as an inguine canal. So its length is around 3.75 centimeter, and it's directed downwards, medially, obliquely. Okay, this is about the inguinal canal. So again, the boundaries of inguinal canal. So anteriorly, it has a skin, superficial fascia, aponeurosis of the external oblique, and posteriorly, the transversalis fascia, and medial half there are the conjoined tendon and the reflected part of the inguinal ligament. Okay, and above there are arched fibers of the internal oblique and transversalis abdominis before they fuse to form a conjoined tendon. So below the upper surface of the inguinal ligament, at its medial end, there will be some sort of lacunar ligament is also present to form a floor for this inguinal ligament. So in this image, you can make out the boundaries. Okay, anteriorly, it is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis, and its rope is formed by the arched fibers of the internal oblique and transversalis abdominis, and floor is formed by the inguinal ligament and partly by the lacunar ligament also, and its posterior part is usually formed by the fascia transversalis. Okay, and inguinal ligament. So now, so this regarding the superficial inguinal ring. So this is an interval in the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. So it's an interval. Okay. So from the external oblique musculature, it will form. Okay. Then it will be somewhat triangular in shape, and its base will be formed by the crest of pubis, and sides are formed by the margins of aponeurosis. These are called as crura of the ring. So either two margins, okay, both medial and lateral margins. These are called as two crura of the ring. Okay, the lateral crest is again it is stronger, and there will be intercrucial fibers are present. So this is regarding the superficial inguinal ring. So coming to the deep inguinal ring, it's an opening in the fascia transversalis around 1.25 centimeter above the mid-inguinal point. So already told you that mid-inguinal point is nothing but what? So if you should draw that line from anterior superior iliac spine to the pubic spine or the pubic tubercle, and you just point out the midpoint in this line, just above 1.25 centimeter, you will find the deep inguinal ring. Okay, and it will be oval in shape and long axis being vertical, and varies in size in between in different individuals actually. And this deep inguinal ring usually lies just lateral to the inferior epigastric vessels. This is very important to understand in the hernia. Okay. Then contents of the inguinal hernias, like inguinal in the inguinal canal. So usually this ilioinguinal nerve in both the sexes, it transmits through this medial part of the canal, and in case of males, the spermatic cord and its coverings, and also there is a vestigial remnant part of this processus vaginalis will be passed through. And in case of females, the round ligament of the uterus and the remnant part of processus vaginalis. Okay, so this patency of the processus vaginalis is the only reason for the indirect inguinal hernias in females as well as in the males. Okay, and these are the coming to the coverings of the spermatic cord. So spermatic cord coverings, usually the internal spermatic fascia. Okay, so this internal spermatic fascia is formed by the fascia transversalis at deep inguinal ring, and second layer it's inside to outside. Okay, so inside internal spermatic fascia, it is formed by the fascia transversalis at deep inguinal ring, and the second layer is the cremasteric fascia. Okay, it is formed by the internal oblique musculature, and the external layer it is formed by the this aponeurosis of the oblique externus abdominis at the superficial ring, that is external spermatic fascia. So what are the structures coming across the spermatic cord? This is very important to understand again. The VAS difference, it is visible in the image, that is the VAS difference during surgery. We have got that VAS difference in the image. And the arteries of the spermatic cord, these are also passing through this spermatic cord. That is, one is very important, that's testicular artery, and artery of VAS difference, and the artery to the cremaster. And next is campaniform plexus of testicular veins. So these are again passing through this testis, this inguinal canal, which are draining the venous blood from the testis. Okay, and lymph vessels of the testis, and nerves, that is testicular plexus of the sympathetic nerve. These are the structures coming across this spermatic cord. Then coming to the etiology for the hernia, this is proper, we'll discuss from now onwards. So it's the etiology, usually broadly classified under two headings, that is weakness of the abdominal musculature, and another one is increased intra-abdominal pressure. Okay, so weakness of the abdominal musculature can happen by two ways. One is congenital weakness, another one is acquired weakness. So congenital weakness, that is a persistence of processus vaginalis, what I have discussed during the anatomy. During the descent of testis, usually the processus vaginalis which helps for the descent of testis, okay, during the embryonic life, the ninth month. So this is going to be rudimentary, okay. If there is any persistence present in this processus vaginalis, that will cause the indirect inguinal hernia. Okay, and one more is patent canal of Nuck in females. I already discussed. Any patency in this canal of Nuck, then there will be formation of the indirect inguinal hernia in females. Then acquired weaknesses like excessive fat in the abdomen. So excessive fat in the abdomen, again it causes the what? So it will increase the abdominal again, and whatever the fat material is there, omental fat or abdominal fat, so that will make the way to come out from the muscular fibers. Okay, so it will do the weakness of the anterior abdominal musculature. So excessive fat in the abdomen, and again muscle weakness, usually followed by repeated pregnancies, multiparous women, and the surgical incisions leads to muscle weakness due to nerve injuries. Example, during appendectomy, you may injure the ilioinguinal nerve. Okay, so that will cause the again weakness in the anterior abdominal wall musculature, leads to an indirect inguinal hernias. And one more, this classification, that is increased intra-abdominal pressure. It might be because of chronic cough. Okay, so chronic cough may be caused by the many conditions like tuberculosis, whooping cough in the children's, and in case of even acute of the chronic bronchitis conditions, and bladder neck obstruction. Sometimes sometimes stones are obstructing at the level of neck of the bladder, or else sometimes there will be chance of tumors which have been developed inside the bladder that may obstruct the bladder neck. So here the bladder neck obstruction, how it can cause the intra-abdominal pressure? So it's due to straining. So this person starts straining for the urination repeatedly. So that then what happens? There is a increased abdominal pressure, leads to again the weakness of the intra-abdominal wall musculature, leads to an inguinal hernias. Again, in enlarged prostate. So this also again causes the straining of the urine. Again, the straining during the lifting heavy weights. heavyweight lifters, usually so agricultural family individuals, they are going to develop such kind of hernias commonly because of lifting of heavy weight repeatedly. So that will cause again intra-abdominal pressure, increased intra-abdominal pressure, then leading to an hernias. Again, vomiting, constipation. These vomiting, constipation, again, these are causing the intra-abdominal pressure, increased intra-abdominal pressure. So these are etiologies for the hernia. So coming to the pathology. So here, sac. Sac is the pathology you can see in the inguinal hernia. The sac, which is nothing but a pouch of peritoneum. Okay, it's a pouch of peritoneum which comes out through the abdominal musculature into the inguinal canal, or else through the Hasselbalch's triangle. Okay, the sac, which is nothing but a pouch of peritoneum containing abdominal contents, viscera. Okay, which is coming out through the abdominal musculatures. So its parts are there, like the mouth. The mouth is nothing but where the contents are going to enter through the through this area, and the neck part is constricted part, where the deep inguinal ring is there. That part is going to be constricted. So this part is considered as neck, and the body is a main portion of this sac, and the fundus, which is the most redundant part. Okay, so this is to understand the pathology, the sac which is present inside the inguinal canal. Then what would be the contents of this inguinal hernia? So it may be a omentum, then you can call it as an omentocele. It may be a loop of intestine, that is called as enterocele. Then there will be a chance of portion of the circumference of intestine, that is called as Richter's hernia. Then there will be a chance of Meckel's diverticulum, it's a congenital disease. Okay, Meckel's diverticulum will be present inside the ileum, okay, in the abdomen, that may protrude to the inguinal region, that is called as Richter's hernia. And loop of intestine. So when the complete loop of intestines are protruded through the deep inguinal ring, and which looks like W, then it is called as Medell's hernia. In this image, you can make out that loop of intestine, which is looking like a W shape. It's called as Medell's hernia. Okay. So now, coming to the indirect inguinal hernia. So already I told you the contents of the abdomen enter the deep inguinal ring, and which courses through the inguinal canal, and further it comes out through the superficial inguinal ring, and finally it resides in the scrotum. Okay, this is nothing but an indirect inguinal hernia. Okay, and it is very common than the direct inguinal hernia. More commonly seen on the right side. Why? Because it might be because of later descent of the right testis. Okay, and 1/3 of the cases of these hernias are bilateral, and particularly in children, hernia is more common on the right side. It might be because of the later descent of the right testis. And this is the image showing that indirect inguinal hernia route. Okay, sorry. Here the contents are protruding through the internal ring, that is deep inguinal ring. You can make out that deep inguinal ring or the internal ring in the image. So from there, it will course the inguinal canal, then comes out from the superficial inguinal ring, and finally enters into the scrotum. So this is how the indirect inguinal hernia protrudes. So now classification according to the descent or extent of the content. This indirect inguinal hernial classification based on the extent of the hernial contents up to where it has been extended. Okay. So first one is buginocele. Okay. Here the pathology will be limited to the inguinal canal. Whenever the contents are reaching up to the superficial inguinal ring, that means the processus vaginalis is patent up to the superficial inguinal ring. In such conditions, the contents will be limited up to the superficial inguinal ring and in the inguinal canal itself. Okay. Excuse me. And its presentations will be, the inguinal swelling will be seen in the individuals. The majority of the victims will be again young adults. Next is funicular inguinal hernia. The funicular inguinal hernia, the processus vaginalis closed just above the epididymis. Okay, in such conditions, the swelling usually present above the epididymis, above the testis. The swelling will be separated from the testis. Okay, seen in adults with long-standing history. Excuse me. Now the third variety, that is a complete or vaginal or scrotal hernia, where the process vaginalis is patent throughout the inguinal canal up to the testis. Okay, then the sac will be up to the scrotum, up to the tunica vaginalis. Okay, so this tunica vaginalis is nothing but what? It's a part of processus vaginalis only. When it is covering the testis, then it is called as external layer of the testis, called tunica vaginalis. Then in these conditions, hernia will be descending up to the scrotum. Okay, it will be very common in children, but in adults also it is very common in the later stages. Okay. The history will be longer in such patients, so it will be looking like a scrotal abdomen when it is the complete hernia. Coming to the direct inguinal hernia, so it protrudes through the posterior wall of the inguinal canal, so medial to the inferior epigastric vessels. So this is the main identification mark. Okay, so medial to the inferior epigastric vessels, that is through the Hasselbalch's triangle. This is an anatomical triangle we'll discuss here only, and it lies outside the spermatic cord. This hernia lies outside the spermatic cord. Why? Because it is not coming through the deep inguinal ring. It is coming from Hasselbalch's triangle, either behind or above or below the cord. Half of the cases are bilateral, whereas in the indirect inguinal hernia, only 1/3 of the cases will be bilateral. But except Ogilvie hernia, direct hernia is always an acquired type. See here, Ogilvie hernia is a kind of congenital hernia which is coming under direct hernia. Okay, so usually there is a defect which is present in the conjoint tendon. There is a small opening which is present in the conjoint tendon. So from there, sometimes there will be a chance of protrusion of the contents, that is called as an Ogilvie hernia. Otherwise, the direct inguinal hernia will be acquired only. So rarely it attains the large size and it may enter into the scrotum. So it is never descends into the scrotum actually. Okay, it will be limited up to the superficial inguinal ring or just below the superficial inguinal ring, but it never reaches up to the scrotum due to the strong conjoint tendon. So this is the anatomy. Okay, Hasselbalch's triangle, what I have told, the direct hernia usually protrudes through. Okay, this is a weak spot of the anterior abdominal wall through which the direct inguinal hernia protrudes. The posterior, in the sense here, the transversalis fascia is there. Okay, this weakened transversalis fascia usually causes the protrusion of the contents. Its borders are like medially by the outer border of the rectus abdominis muscle. So in this image, you can make out there is a medially the medial side, rectus, the fibers of the lateral border of the rectus abdominis muscle, and laterally by the inferior epigastric vessels, you can see they're just lateral to the deep inguinal ring, and below by the medial part of the inguinal ligament. Okay, so this is how this triangle is made, and floor is made up of this fascia transversalis. Okay, so this floor only the contents are protruding, and it will be coming up to this superficial inguinal ring and looking like swelling in the inguinal region. It's called as indirect inguinal hernia. Sorry, direct inguinal hernia. So in this image, you can make out that direct inguinal hernia just medial to the deep inguinal ring, where the spermatic cord is emerging. Okay, just medial to that deep inguinal ring, you can see that the direct inguinal hernial sac. Okay. What are the differentiating features between these two, direct and indirect inguinal hernia? So usually in case of indirect inguinal hernia, it can occur at any age, but commonly seen in children and the young adults. Okay. Whereas in direct hernia, it is seen in elderly individuals. In old age individuals, usually the posterior abdominal, posterior layer of the this inguinal canal is going to be weakened, so that it is very common in elderly individuals. Then the male-female ratio in indirect hernia is 20:1. Why? Because the females are having very small deep inguinal ring and superficial inguinal ring, so that it is very rare to occur the inguinal hernias. Again, the indirect inguinal hernias are very common in females, in males, and rare in females. But direct hernia in females, it is not at all about to occur. Okay, and unilateral and bilateral. So indirect hernia, usually it is unilateral. Around 75% of the individuals will be having unilateral, and 25% will be bilateral. Whereas direct hernia, the 50% of the individuals will be bilateral, and it's in indirect hernia, CAP is around. It will be looking like pyriform, and in direct hernia, it looks like spherical in shape. See, the canal will be pyriform, obliquely coming, no, so that the contents will be looking like pyriform. Okay, in case of indirect hernia, spherical in case of direct hernia, and indirect hernia usually descends obliquely downwards and medially, and this in case of direct hernia, it's a forward long Molgagni bulges will be seen. Okay, then most of the time in case of inguinal hernia, it needs manual reduction. Why? Because it's an oblique uh, canal. It has the two constriction areas like deep inguinal ring and superficial inguinal ring. So there may be a chance there is need of manual reduction. Then in case of direct inguinal hernia, it will reduce by itself when the patient lies down. Okay. Then in the Siemens technique, so these are coming under local examination points. So there I'll cover in detail, but here for differentiating, I'm quoted over here. Siemens technique, here the impulse felt on index finger. Okay. So when you are keeping the index finger on the deep inguinal ring, the impulse usually felt at the deep inguinal ring, then it is considered as indirect inguinal hernia. In case of direct hernia, the impulse will be felt on the middle finger, where the middle finger is kept on the superficial inguinal ring. So then finger imagination test. So here the the little finger is inserted through the bottom of the scrotum, or the root of the scrotum. This little finger has to be inserted up to the superficial inguinal ring. If the impulse is felt to the tip of the finger, then it is called as indirect inguinal hernia. If the impulse is felt at the pulp of the back of the finger, then it is called as direct inguinal hernia. Then ring occlusion test. It's what you are doing first. You are reducing the hernia. So you are asking the patient to lie on the examination table, just occlude the deep inguinal ring. Then ask the patient to cough. Okay, if impulse hits to the pulp of the finger, or the swelling is not visible, then impulse is not visible, then
Dear students, please wait for a few minutes. Sir will rejoin. Audible, sir.
Okay, sir.
Please share your PPT.
Visible, sir?
Yes, sir. Audible and audible. Please share your PPT.
Yes, sir.
Visible, sir.
Okay, sir. Sorry to disturb you.
Please continue.
Yes, sir. Connect again. ಇಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ
ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗೈತೆ ನೋಡಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾಲ್ ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅವ್ರು ಯಾರ್ದ್ರ ಕಾಲ್ ಲ್ಯಾಪ್ಟಾಪ್ ಐತ್ರಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಟರ್ನೆಟ್ ಬಹುಶಃ ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ಇಂದ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್
Sir, audible, sir?
audible
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Continue, sir.
Right, sir. There is a little bit of network issue, sir.
No problem.
Yes.
The screen is not visible, sir.
Yes, sir. We're trying that only, sir.
Sir, otherwise share your PPT into my WhatsApp account or you can make a mail. I will display the PPT.
Is it visible, sir?
Having any problem? No, sir. Yes, sir. Visible.
Is it visible, sir, now?
Yes, sir. Visible.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. Visible. Please continue.
Yes, sir. So these are the difference between the indirect and direct inguinal hernia. So here in the image you can make out the direct inguinal hernia. So usually it protrudes just medial to the deep inguinal ring, and in the indirect inguinal hernia it protrudes through the deep inguinal ring and it follows the inguinal canal and protrudes down towards the scrotum. So these are the classification according to the pathology. The reducible hernia. So here the contents are reducible. Okay. So and irreducible hernia, here the contents are not reducible. So usually the indirect inguinal hernias are reducible manually. Okay. So due to some additions and all, additions between the contents or between the wall and the contents, then the hernia is not going to be reduced. Then there will be chance of obstructed kind of hernias. So whenever there is a large intestine is protruded, okay, So these are going to be obstructed. So then here the cup impulse test will be negative. Okay. Irreducibility and obstruction will be there in this obstructed kind of hernias. Strangulated hernias, usually you will find irreducibility, obstruction. Also you will find then there is a arrest of blood supply to the contents we will see. Then there will be a chance of inflamed hernias. Sometimes the Meckel's diverticulum or the fallopian tubes in the females or the ori, so these are going to be inflamed. Okay, then that may lead to inflamed hernia. Am I audible now? Okay. Symptoms of inguinal hernias. So usually there will be pain, discomfort of or a pain during the time of the descent of the contents to the inguinal hernia. Okay, and there will be a chance of drag of mesentery. So that may lead to the pain in the epigastric region also. Okay, and there will be lump in the inguinal region, and and there will be systemic symptoms also might be seen in case of obstructive kind of hernias and strangulated hernias. Okay, like vomiting and all, even constipations. These all things will be observed in case of inguinal hernia, obstructed kind of hernias. Then other complaints like persistent cough, bronchitis, constipation, dysuria, BPH, stricture of urethra. So these history is supposed to be asked to the patient. Okay. So whenever these kind of symptoms are present, other complaints, so these complaints are going to be treated first. Then go for the inguinal hernial treatment. Okay. Then there will be chance of past history of appendicectomy. That may be then there may be a chance of injury to the inguinal ilioinguinal nerves. Okay. This may lead to then direct inguinal hernia due to weakness of the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. Coming to the local examination. So in this local examination, you should advise the patient to stand. So on standing, you are supposed to examine, and also on supine position, you are supposed to examine the patient. On standing, you can see the position and the extent of the content. Okay, position and the extent of the inguinal hernia. So it will be descending up to the scrotum in the males, and it will be descending up to the labia majora in females in case of indirect inguinal hernia, and it is lying inguinal above the inguinal ligament and medial to the pubic tubercle. So this differentiates the femoral hernia. So usually femoral hernia lies just below the inguinal ligament and it will be lying lateral to the pubic tubercle. Okay. To get above the swelling, this is very, very important. Usually the students get confused. So what is this to get above the swelling? So here at the root of the thumb, you are supposed to hold the root of the scrotum. You are supposed to hold with the index and the thumb. Okay. So just palpate for the cord structures. If you are not getting the cord structures, then it is purely scrotal swelling. If you are not getting the cord structures, then it is nothing but a inguinoscrotal swelling. Okay, this. Then you can consider it as the something is protruding from the deep inguinal ring and entering into the scrotum. Then consistency of this contents you are supposed to on palpation. You may feel the dumpy-like structure. Okay, dumpy and granular. Then it is called as omentocele. In enterocele, then it is you will feel the elastic contents consistency. Then in case of strangulated hernia, there will be tension and the tenderness will be there. Okay, on palpation. Then impulse on cuffing when there is no swelling. Okay, you just ask the patient to lie on the examination table or stand on the stand in front of you. Then ask the patient to cuff. Then if there is any swelling is observed during cuffing, then we can make out that swelling in the inguinal region to diagnose the inguinal hernia. Then again, and to root of the scrotum also you can hold with the index finger and the thumb. You may feel the cuff impulse during cuffing. Okay. So, but this impulse on cuffing will be absent in case of obstructed kind of hernias or strangulated hernias. Okay. And reducibility is supposed to check for reducibility. In supine position, the direct hernias are usually reducible by its own, but in case of indirect inguinal hernias, it's very difficult. Sometimes for long-standing history cases. So then you should perform the taxis. Okay. So that is nothing but what you just ask the patient to flex his thigh and adduct the thigh and rotate internally, so that the the arched fibers of this what internal oblique muscle and transversalis abdominis muscles are going to be relaxed, and contents can be pushed by manually with the manually by manipulating. In this image, you can make out this manually with one hand they are reducing the contents, and on other hand they are manipulating the inguinal rings. Okay, so that by that you can reduce the contents. And in case of invagination test, so here in the image you can make out. So usually the inguinal, this superficial inguinal ring admits only the little finger. Okay, but usually practically we are introducing the index finger with very caution. Okay, so this index finger you should supposed to insert the bottom of the scrotum, and this finger has to reach up to the superficial inguinal ring. Then if the impulse is felt at the tip of the finger, then that is considered as indirect inguinal hernia. If the impulse is felt just posterior to the pulp the finger, then it is called as direct inguinal hernia. So ring occlusion test. So already we have discussed, you are going to occlude the deep inguinal ring. Before that, you have to ask the patient to lie on the examination table, then palpate the deep inguinal ring half inch above the mid inguinal point. So then ask the which is felt to the pulp of the finger and swelling is not visible, then it is called as indirect inguinal hernia. If the swelling is visible just medial to this deep inguinal ring occlusion, then it is considered as direct inguinal hernia. Then Siemens technique. Okay, so here in Siemens technique, what he has told, so you're supposed to keep the index finger on the deep inguinal ring after reduction only. Okay, after reduction of the contents, supposed to keep the index finger on the deep inguinal ring and middle finger on the superficial inguinal ring, and the ring finger on the then it is called as indirect inguinal hernia. If the impulse is felt on the middle finger, pulp of the finger, then it is considered as direct inguinal hernia. Why? Because it is coming directly from the Hasselback's triangle and reaching up to the superficial inguinal ring. Okay. Then if the content sitting at the level of this index finger, pulp of the index finger, then it is considered as femoral hernia. So you can differentiate the hernias. Then difference between the enterocele and omentocele. So if the content is intestine, then peristaltic movements can be visible. Okay. And elasticity on palpation, you can make out the elasticity, consistency, and comparatively the first part of the intestine, first part of this hernia is going to be reduced difficulty, but later part will decrease, reduce by itself. Why? Because the gas is present inside the intestine. In the beginning, it is very difficult to reduce. Once the gas is reduced or the escapes from the content, then the whole contents can be reduced easily. During reduction, gurgling, it may produce the resonant sound also and may hear the peristaltic sounds. Then in case of omentocele, if it is omentocele, so usually the peristalsis cannot be seen and its consistency will be duffy and granular on palpation. And on reduction, generally it is very difficult to reduce the last part. Okay, first part can be reduced easily, but last part can be reduced with difficulty. Why? Because it's a fan-like structure, momentum. So it is very difficult to reduce the last part. On reduction, no gurgling. There is a resonant sound. Okay, and no peristaltic sounds are heard in case of omentocele. And the rare varieties of inguinal hernias, other than these direct and indirect hernias, the sliding hernia, the Richter's hernia, I already told. Richter's hernia is nothing but a circumference of the portion of circumference of the intestine is protruding. It is called as Richter's hernia. Richter's hernia means the Meckel's diverticulum is protruding in the inguinal canal. Okay, that is called as Richter's hernia. Then Medell's hernia, the loop of the intestine, which looks like W, okay, in the inguinal canal or in the scrotum, then it is called as Medell's hernia. So coming to the management of this inguinal hernia, so usually the two classifications, conservative management and operative management. With these two managements, we can manage the inguinal hernia. So conservative management, no treatment. Okay, so the patient who is refusing for the surgery and those who are having generalized illness and those who are having the short life expectancy. Okay, thus such patients, the treatment cannot be advisable. So then truss management. Okay, operative management, herniatomy, herniorrhaphy, and hernioplasty. There are three surgical managements are there, like herniatomy, herniorrhaphy, hernioplasty. We'll go one by one. So no treatment. So I told already, there is whenever there is a patient suffering from severe generalized illness, okay, like tuberculosis, etc. Then short life expectancy in case of CA conditions, the patients are suffering from CA and all. Such patients, the surgery is not advisable. And those who are refusing for the operation, those patients cannot be taken for surgery. And truss management. Truss here, this is in this image, what you are seeing, it is nothing but a truss, okay, which is applied after reduction of the contents. Okay, so usually the truss is nothing but what? It's a belt, which is you can call it as an also a T bandage or the Gopana Bandha. Okay, so you are applying the truss after reduction of the contents. Okay, indication is who refuses for the operation and those who are unfit for the anesthesia and those who are having the chronic illnesses like bronchitis, BPH, etc. Okay, then it is contraindication in irreducible hernias. Why? Because when it is irreducible hernia is there, then if you are applying the truss, then that may cause the pressure atrophy of muscles. Okay, then patient sometimes it is contraindicated in case of strenuous jobs. Hernia with undescended testis is there, then truss is again contraindicated. Why? Because it will compress the further testis and it will become fibrosis. So like that, there are contraindications have been mentioned. So usually the method will be after reduction of the contents, supposed to apply the truss. It can be worn throughout the day, night he can remove it. Okay. Coming to the operative management of this inguinal hernia, so usually anesthesia can be preferable, that is local anesthesia or else general anesthesia. Local anesthesia is preferably advised in case of those who are having the lung disorders like chronic bronchitis and all. So in such patients, the cardiac pathologies, etc. Under local anesthesia, you can go ahead with this herniatomy, herniorrhaphy, and hernioplasty. And again, general anesthesia also can be advised. And again, nowadays you can practice with the help of even spinal anesthesia also. So under supine position, you just ask the your on supine position, pillow beneath the knees, and the table is little bit of tilted from. That means head low position should be advised. Why? Because contents will reduce the drawn towards the diaphragm. Then incision, this is very important, where the incision should be taken. So the incision should be on inguinal canal, exactly on the inguinal canal. So where the exact inguinal canal is lying, ½ inch above and parallel to the medial 2/3 of the inguinal ligament. Okay. So in this image, the first one, the A incision. Okay. So that is the oblique incision. Okay. ½ inch above and parallel to the medial 2/3 of the inguinal ligament. The incision should be taken. Why? Because inguinal canal is exactly lying at this place. So, and one more incision is cosmetic incision on the skin crease, the skin cleavage you can take. That is a B incision we can see in the image. And once after taking an incision on the skin, the superficial fascias, the fascias of the camper and the fascia of scarpa, while dividing the fascia of camper, immediately after dividing the fascia of camper in the same line of the incision, then you will find the superficial epigastric vein and the external pudendal vein. Those are ligated properly. Okay, this is an horizontal incision, usually practiced for the cosmetic purpose. So details of procedure here, the external oblique is carefully cleaned off all the fat. So once after taking an incision, you are separating the superficial fascia of camper and the membranous layer that is called as fascia of scarpa. Then followed by your, there is a visibility of external oblique. So it has to be cleaned up, whole fat is cleaned and external ring is visualized. Okay. So external ring, it is formed by what? The two margins of this aponeurosis itself and the crura. Okay, it is called as an crura, so which is triangular in shape. Okay, so this will be visible once after opening up this superficial fascias. Then a small incision is made on this external oblique aponeurosis, and which extends up to the external inguinal ring. Okay, so then the lower side of this external oblique is freed by the blunt dissection. So lower side of the external oblique. So in this image you can see that the lower side of the external oblique, it has to be freed from the inguinal ligament. Okay, up to the groove of inguinal ligament you have to free this external oblique aponeurosis with a blunt gauze dissection. Okay, then ilioinguinal nerve also you can identify, which is running across over this external oblique aponeurosis, just medial to this cord. Okay, that has to be secured properly or preserved. Then cremasteric fascia are visible. This cord structure will be visible. Okay, the cremasteric fibers are grasped with the help of this tooth forceps and divided in order to approach the sac. Okay, the cremasteric fascia. So in this image, you can see that cremasteric fascia, this external spermatic fascia, cremasteric musculature, and the internal cremasteric fascia are going to be snipped. Okay, the small incision should be taken with care, and with the help of blunt dissection, also you can extend the incision and you just open up the whole this cremasteric fascia of the fibers to visualize the sac. So when this you are going to open towards the medial side, then you will find the sac which is looking like white in color. Okay, so that has to be identified, and so during that time you're supposed to take care of this vas deferens. Okay, and the testicular arteries. So this in the blood supply, the artery of the vas deferens, those all things should be taken care of while dissection of the cord. So here, once you are identifying the sac, which is looking like white in color, so that has to be held with the artery forceps and it has to be given to the assistant, and the surgeon should separate the cord structures from the sac up to the deep inguinal ring until the extraperitoneal pad is seen. Okay, here you can make out that hernial sac. You can observe in the image. Here also in this picture also you can make out. Then this is an hernial sac. Okay, it you have been separated from the cord structure. Then you can enter the then you are lifting up the cord structure with the help of pair of artery forceps, and it is getting opened, and the index finger has to be inserted inside this sac up to the deep inguinal ring to check out whether any adhesions are there in the deep inguinal ring or not. If any adhesions are there, those are released. Okay, and followed by some usually that they practice the bursting suture to close up this neck part of this sac. Okay, then in this image you can see what we have performed in the case of hernia, inguinal hernia, the sac which is lifted with a pair of these arteries, and the next image we are rolling it. Okay, we are rolling the sac, and why we are rolling it? To avoid the protrusion of any contents during the time of ligation. Okay, so the third picture, we are after ligation we are excising the hernial sac. Okay, and further the stump will be folded inside this arched fibers of the internal oblique musculature and the transversalis fascia of the deep inguinal ring. Coming to the Bechini's repair, this comes under the herniorrhaphy. Okay, repair of the hernia. So this till now we have discussed regarding the herniotomy. Okay, so Bechini's repair, here what they are doing, they are strengthening the posterior wall of the abdomen. Posterior wall of the abdomen in the sense the transversalis fascia. Okay, below the spermatic cord, that has to be strengthened to avoid the recurrence. Okay, so here along with the herniotomy, we need to strengthen the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. The 3 to 5 interrupted sutures should be put from conjoint tendon to the conjoint tendon and the conjoint musculatures like internal oblique and transverse abdominis musculatures. Lower lip of these muscles be taken by, and the inner margin of the inguinal ligament has to be taken with this needle, and it has to be ligated. Interrupted suture should be put in this manner, in this image what they have shown, up to the deep inguinal ring. But utmost care should be taken that you are not supposed to injure the inferior epigastric artery, where it is coming just medial to the deep inguinal ring. And again, while putting the middle suture in this Besni's repair, while putting the middle suture in to the inner margin of this inguinal ligament, you may injure the external iliac vein or a femoral vein. So utmost care should be taken, so that surgeon should push the contents downwards at that area, then take the bite to the inner margin of the inguinal ligament. So this is nothing but a Besni's repair. So in this, again the same procedure, I told you that herniatomy followed by a strengthening of the posterior wall of the inguinal canal has to be strengthened with the help of even non-absorbable suture like Prolene or a silk or nylon you can put, and even some surgeons they take the catgut also. Okay, these are all the images of the Besni's repair. Okay, and this is nothing but a Scholde's repair. It's also kind of herniorrhaphy. Scholde's repair here also, what they are doing here, whenever there is too much of weakening of the posterior wall. So then here what they are doing, they are taking an incision from the deep inguinal ring to the pubic tubercle on the transversalis fascia. They are dividing the transversalis fascia from deep inguinal ring and taking care of this internal epigastric artery just medial to the deep inguinal ring. Separate the transversalis fascia, and they are overlapping both the edges. The upper flap is overlapped on the lower flap, and they are putting interrupted sutures, and the suture which is putting so medial side, so that should be taken care of. That the most recurrence usually occurs in the medial side of this, just above the pubic tubercle, so that the suture should be taken to the periosteum of pubic tubercle and to the conjoint tendon first, rather taking towards the inguinal ligament. So this is regarding the Scholde's repair. So everything is same. Here they are followed by herniatomy. They are overlapping the whatever the separated transversalis fascia is there, transversalis muscle is there. The upper flap is overlapped on the lower flap and put the interrupted sutures. So this image, what it is showing, it's nothing but a Scholde's repair. In this, it's nothing but a closure of the after performing the Besni's repair and the Scholde's repair. One should close second the closure of the external oblique. Continuous suture can be put for the external oblique. Okay, coming to the mesh repair. So mesh repair here, the mesh can be used for this hernia repair. Usually the mesh repair is advisable for direct hernias and the old individuals. Okay, usually mesh repair. It's not advisable for the pediatrics and the young adults. Why? Because they will be having the strong posterior abdominal musculature. So this is the again the herniatomy followed by the mesh repair. Here the mesh preparation. Okay, the lateral opening should be made for passage of the internal spermatic cord, internal opening, to making the internal opening, and this is how the mesh should be placed, and it has to be sutured, anchored at the place of pubic tubercle first, then it has to be sutured with the inner lip of the inguinal ligament and the conjoint tendon to medial side, and it has to be fixed, and the deep inguinal ring should be formed properly. Okay. So take care that it should not be constricted at the level of deep inguinal ring, and again the bite should be taken the medial side of the deep inguinal ring. It has to be careful. Okay. This is regarding the mesh repair. Okay. And post-operative care. So usually post-operatively the again foot and elevation should be given, and the support to the scrotum should be given. Then cough must be controlled whenever there is bronchitis and all. And the straining for the stool, those should be avoided. Then normal activities are resumed after. Usually the tolerated work can be resumed by the patient later on. Then in children, usually you would advise the food after 4 to 6 hours after operation, and by the evening of operation, you can give the normal diet. Then conclusion about this inguinal hernia. So inguinal hernia can occur at any time from infancy to adulthood, and is much more common in males than females. And inguinal hernias are repaired through the surgeries like herniotomy, herniorrhaphy, and hernioplasty. Okay. Any questions? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Huh.
Waiting for
Any questions?
Questions, sir. Yes, sir. Wait a second.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Suresh asking about, can you repeat the Shoddy's repairs?
Okay, sir. See, in case of shoulders repair, usually whenever there is too much of weakness is there, okay, in the above 50s or the 60s, there is a weakness of the transversalis abdominis. Okay, so there what you are doing, you are taking an incision from the deep inguinal ring to the pubic spine. To the pubic spine, you are taking an incision that you are opening completely. You are opening the transversalis abdominis. Okay. Once opening of this transversalis abdominis, here you can see this. Okay, they have opened up the first they have done the herniotomy. Okay, the neck up sac you can see visibly. Is it visible image? The neck up sac is visible there. Okay, it is ligated. And once after doing the herniotomy, what they are doing? They are taking an incision from the deep inguinal ring to the pubic spine on the this transversalis abdominis musculature. Okay, so why? Because it is weakened. No, so now what they are doing? Upper flap is placed on the lower flap. So nothing but a double breasting. Okay, upper flap is placed on the lower flap, and the interrupted suture should be put. Okay. It is sutured with a polypropylene thread. Okay, proline thread. But here utmost care should be taken that not to be injured the inferior epigastric artery while taking an incision on the transversalis fascia just medial to the deep inguinal ring. Understood?
Thank you, sir. Management of recurrent hernia, recurrent inguinal hernia.
Yes, sir. Very good question. So, recurrent inguinal hernia. See, whenever you are performing the herniotomy in the young adults, okay, in young adults, what happens there? Partly the posterior abdominal wall musculature is weakened. Okay, partly they are weakened, not completely weakened. Okay, but in olden days, what happens? There may be a chance of they are indulging in the repeated weightlifting, or the what are the etiologies I have told you, that chronic cough or the bronchitis or the BPH conditions. When they develop these kind of illnesses, then there may be a chance of recurrence of the hernias. Okay, recurrence of these hernias. Okay, in the olden days. Then what happens? Here the management will be again opening the inguinal region, the same incision again. Okay, incision should be taken just medial two-third of this on the inguinal canal. Then open the whole layers, but some sort of anatomical disruption will be there. Should open the layers. Then contents, just identify the again the same thing. Here only the thing is that mesh plasty is the advisable. When you do the mesh plasty, then there won't be any recurrence. Okay, so whatever the hernioplasty I have told you, that is the advisable for this recurrence of hernia. In olden days, they used to use the fascia lata for the repair. Okay, the mesh repair. Nowadays you are getting the polypropylene meshes. Okay, or even they have used the skin also for mesh purpose in olden days for the recurrence of recurrent hernias. Right?
Thank you, sir.
Any other doubts?
Dr. Suresh asking about what are the complications and regular diet and habit after herniatomy, sir?
After herniatomy, what are the complications?
Yes, sir.
Okay, after herniatomy, there will be a chance of infections. Okay, there will be a chance of wound infections, and there will be a chance of what? So usually the kind of infections taken place are due to bleeding. Okay, there will be a chance of bleeding from the sometimes during surgery, some oozing points have been left over, like venules or the arterioles. Okay, so from there may be a chance of bleeding. So such kind of things, so that may lead to an infection. So that has to be covered with the help of broad spectrum antibiotics. Okay, and the care should be taken that the patient should not lift the heavy weights at least for 3 to 6 months. And again the weight lifting will be reduced. Okay, in future also. So if he is working as he has before work, okay, again there will be a chance of recurrences will be there. So for that reason, should avoid the strenuous work. And again the diet here after herniatomy, you can advise the diet which is not causing the infections. Okay, like high rich protein diet can be advised along with some sort of vegetables. Okay, to avoid the constipation and all. Any other doubts?
Sir,
Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Some surgeons preferring above 60 years patients. Above 60 years patient, they are advising orchidectomy with herniorrhaphy or hernioplasty. Is there need?
It is. Orchidectomy. With their consent, you can go ahead with the help of this orchidectomy followed by an hernia repair. Why? Because this old age, what happens? So you are leaving the spermatic cord itself is again causing the weakness in old age individuals. Okay, having multiple children, then there is no of even this test is for the progeny, isn't it? After 60 years, it is not needed. So that you just advise, you take a consent from the patient and the relatives can go ahead for the orchidectomy. And if you are doing orchidectomy, followed by orchidectomy, you are doing hernia repair, then hernia repair and the hernioplasty, it will be well and good. Okay, the recurrences are very less in old age individuals. Yeah, usually the modern surgeons, they are preferring after 60 years orchidectomy, followed by orchidectomy, they are going for hernioplasty to avoid the recurrence. A very good question, sir. Is it clear, sir?
Yes, sir. Clear, sir. Clear and audible, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Sir, how to differentiate undescended testis and inguinal hernias?
Undescended testis
and inguinal hernia.
Yes, very good. Yes, sir. So undescended testis. Okay. Whenever there is an defect during the descent of testis. Okay. So testis will be present in the inguinal canal, somewhere in the inguinal pouch, or it may be present up to the in the deep inguinal ring itself also. When it is present inside the inguinal canal only, it will be questionable. Okay, to differentiate the inguinal hernia from the undescended testis. So undescended testis, on palpation, you will feel the consistency of the this undescended testis consistency you can feel, and again you may not have the cup impulse at that area in case of undescended testis, and again in case of inguinal hernia you will find the this cup impulse will be positive in case of inguinal hernia. Understood that? Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
हाँ सर. Couple test only we can make out, sir, undescended the inguinal hernia, and also you can make out on palpation you will feel the cystic lump or the lump or the testis you can palpate in the inguinal canal. Any other doubts, sir?
All questions were over.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you to the Dallana team, Principal Sir, Dr. K.C. Das sir, and so all the team, Sidling Murthy sir, Dr. Asma, Dr. Budni sir. Okay, thank you and all for giving me a great opportunity for this webinar. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
ಎರಡು ಸಲ ಡಿಸ್ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಆಯ್ತು ಸರ್, ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಇದೆ.
ಹೌದು ಸರ್, ಡಿಸ್ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಟಿ ದಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ರಿಮೋಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಇದೆ.
ಇದು ರೇನಿ ಸೀಸನ್ ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್.
ಹೌದು ಸರ್.
Sir, shall we conclude this session?
Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you. Sangeeta, over to you.
Thank you, sir. It was a very knowledgeable and wonderful session. We are so privileged to have you with us today. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Dr. Hanmant Bagi, it was a nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
So we'll conclude here. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.